It's interesting in hospitality, many people actually, if you look at the C-suite, started in entry-level jobs and worked their way up. Like there are so many stories of people that started as dishwashers and that are now CEOs of hospitality companies. And so there's a bit of that like baked into the industry we work in. But what that does is it kind of like creates human connection immediately.
Welcome to the Moxie podcast. We are in the month of October and we're talking about how we storytell, not just for impacts, but how we're doing that with transparency. And this comes in all different facets, depending if you're a nonprofit or a business or you are a solopreneur. But the art of storytelling is something that I just wanted to talk through this month because I think it's a beautiful way that we can connect and create community virtually or in person. But also, the more that we can be vulnerable in our story and kind of share that with others, the more people feel the true, authentic self of who we are and maybe also our business as well. And so today I have Lauren on the podcast. I'm really excited to just for our community to get to know you and then also get to know Procure Impact and what you guys are up to. But welcome to Moxie.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. To start off, I just love our community to kind of get to know a little bit of background. I normally just ask what you're best known for. So that can be really anything. And where are you now? I used to do these podcasts in person. So it's always like, oh, where is everybody in the world? So where are you, Lauren?
So I live outside of Washington, D.C. I'm in Falls Church, Virginia. What I'm best known for, I would say this is more of like a, if people are in my inner circle, but I used to be a singer. I was like cover band singer, jingle singer. So I have a creative streak. And then I realized over time I was a builder. I had been in philanthropy for a long time. I was running a large fund focused on poverty in the US. And that's really where the idea and concept for Procure Impact came from through both that professional and personal experience. Then I just realized I was a builder within organizations, and why not bet on myself and start to kind of manifest some of these ideas that I'd had for a long time.
I almost want to ask you to single jingle for us. I didn't even didn't
Yeah,
even
there's
know.
some really corny
That's a good
ones.
fun fact.
It is a fun fact and it's a fun memory, like that. I joke I'm retired now and have kids, and my kids don't even realize I was a singer. They'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that's a thing mommy did in the past." But yeah, becoming an entrepreneur was a pretty exciting and big leap for me. So, as context about Procure Impact and kind of the idea itself. So, I'd been in the poverty space for a long time. And obviously, one of the most impactful ways to help someone out of poverty is through work and through a job. And we would
Mhm.
invest in a lot of workforce development programs that were helping train people, soft skills, hard skills, help them find long term employment. And I would tour all over the US looking at these workforce programs and saw many of them were manufacturing products, everything from bath and body to furniture to art to jewelry. And these were beautiful, high quality products. And it struck me that many of the enterprises we worked with, that they were focused on B2C customers, like conscious consumers like me, making majority of their funding and money during holiday gift season. And not many were equipped or were thinking about B2B purchases in corporate America. It's just hard to penetrate, it's complicated. They didn't
Yeah.
have those natural networks. So I wrote a two-pager at the time about how somebody needed to build a bridge between these amazing life-changing products in corporate America, as so many companies were looking for ways to align their supply chain and impact and purchasing power and impact. And then I had a personal experience that made me realize I needed to go build that bridge. What brought me to philanthropy in the first place was I have a brother who, at one point, was actually homeless and a missing person because of chronic mental health issues, compounded by a disability and addiction. And my brother's an artist. Actually, some of his art's behind me on the wall right now. But he's an artist, a writer, a musician, a creative. And he would paint for himself to help him self process his story. And he was actually discovered for his art at like one of the worst times in his life by an enterprise called Artlifting that works with artists with disabilities and artists who've been unhoused. And they started selling his art. And he got purchases from big companies like Pfizer and Amazon. And those purchases just completely shifted his mindset about what he was capable of and what the path forward could be. And he started to call himself an artist. He started to be defined as an artist and not through the lens of his disability. And it wasn't that the money itself was going to completely help him stabilize in those early purchases. It was the mindset shift that really did it for him. And he's now married, he's living independently, he's employed. And all of that really came from like a couple of purchases that helped him see what he was capable of and see himself through his strengths. And so I realized when that happened for my brother, I was like, how do you scale that? How do you make that happen every day for more people? And that I had built this natural network of all these suppliers in the US. And so Procure Impact is a B2B marketplace. We have over 100 suppliers. They all employ individuals with barriers to work in the US. And we primarily work in the hospitality sector because they have huge purchasing power and can purchase snacks and retail products and furniture and art to create a really unique guest experience grounded in purpose. But it is joyful work. Like I get to work with amazing social entrepreneurs and help them essentially accelerate their impact through increasing their sales.
I love it. I think one, I don't know if we've ever talked about your brother. I think maybe briefly when we first met one another, but I really love just also how rooted in your passion and just the historical of your like professional career. It's like it built into where you are today. I'm curious on like in that story because you're like, okay, entrepreneurship, this kind of happened. Was that ever modeled for you? Or when was that where you're like, yeah, I think I'm gonna take a chance on myself, as you're writing that 2 page like someone needs to do this. Like when did that shift in your mind that okay, I can be a part, I can do this myself versus like wait on someone else to do this?
Yeah, my growing up, my dad was actually an entrepreneur. He owned a recording studio, so connecting it all to music and the creative part of my family. He built his recording studio and built a book of clients and had amazing artists actually leverage his facilities. And I saw the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, like firsthand, right? It's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's a lot of difficult pivots one has to make, but I think it gave me a sense of like, okay, you can build something from nothing. Like you have the ability to garner your resources, your networks, and really make something happen. I also had someone say to me, I was about to kind of take a pivot back into philanthropy and go take another philanthropic job. And one of my dear friends actually said to me, if you don't build your dreams, someone's going to hire you to build theirs. And it was like a gut
Mhm.
punch because I realized I had been like dutifully building other people's dreams for a really long time. And I had thought about entrepreneurship as like something to do when my kids get to college, like, when we have enough resources and we're like kind of in those golden years of like not having so much strain, with two young kids, young family. That wasn't on the radar of like, oh yeah, I'm going to become an entrepreneur because it felt so difficult to make a leap that has an impact on my family. But it's actually unleashed so much joy in our family because our kids get to see us build a business. My husband actually joined the business a year ago. So the unexpected benefit of that is like my daughter's now talking about the businesses she wants to build, right? And like coming up with all these
Mhm.
concepts and ideas about her future, which I didn't realize by modeling that it would help shift the vision of what she wants to do in her life.
Yeah, I can agree to like I didn't grow up with entrepreneurs in my family. So I'm just a little bit like the crazy one that no one really understands and why you would, risk like doing this. So very misunderstood in my family. But it's really, really interesting to watch my daughter when asked like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's not that like typical answer of fitting into a system, of like a teacher or doctor type thing. It is. She's like, oh yeah, well, I want to build a nail salon and then I want to do this. And it's like building her own thing. And so it is really cool to see that transition and this kind of like such an innocence of kids, but also like to realize how much power we have in our influence as parents as well. Yeah.
Yeah, my kids this summer actually built a popsicle business. It was kind of like an upgraded lemonade stand, but they got super into it. It was like, okay, what are our flavors? What's our brand? What's the aesthetic going to look like? And I realized when we were, building Procure Impact literally in our house, they're seeing us ask these questions and hearing our conversations, and
Mhm.
it's influencing how they think about what's possible, which is so cool.
Yeah, that's so good. I want to talk a little bit again to circle back to the transparency of storytelling. I've talked about it a little bit throughout the interviews in this month of in different ways. One, if again we're talking to personally, if you're a solopreneur and talking to your customers, how do you relate? And then also how do you have boundaries? You don't have to share everything about your life. I've talked to executive directors specifically on what does it look like to be transparent, right? And your storytelling for donor engagement and creating and building a community. I'd be so curious what it looks like, and especially in the beginning stages when, yeah, you're trying to penetrate that corporation side and the B2B of how you are bringing them and their budgets in connection to these beautiful social entrepreneurs all around the states doing awesome stuff. Like how I'm curious of just the evolution of it, like how it started, because I know like just even
Yeah.
beginning those conversations and then where you are now, and where you're seeing momentum.
Yeah, on the storytelling itself and how we share those stories, for one thing is that's really important to us is the language that we use. And so we use words like we represent products made by people who are overlooked and underestimated. And they're words that get people to kind of, tweak their head a little bit to the side and get them to think. And so it's really important for us to use that strengths-based language to talk about like the amazing grit, determination, and extraordinary talents of the people behind the products. It's probably my most favorite treasured thing that I do in my job is that we're in these rooms shifting mindset about what the people are capable of behind the products that are made by kind of using language like that to provoke deeper conversation. What's been really amazing and unexpected about this work is that we give speeches all the time about what we do, and all it really is telling stories about, survivors of trafficking that make the products and the individuals with disabilities that make these beautiful, extraordinary truffles. And every single time we tell these stories, we open up vulnerably about our own story. I share my brother's story. I share the fact that I'm a person in recovery, that the statistics, if you look at how many people are impacted by addiction and mental health and who have somebody in their lives who've experienced some barrier, like poverty, incarceration, refugees that have been resettled in the US, it's highly likely the person across the table from you virtually or in the room with you, that there are people who have the same experience, right? It's just statistically the reality. And so when we are sharing these stories, there are usually like lines of people after a speech that want to tell us their story, their child with a disability that they worry about in terms of long-term employment and the opportunities that they face, or their own recovery journey or their own story of facing a barrier and overcoming that barrier. It's interesting in hospitality, many people actually, if you look at the C-suite, started in entry level jobs and worked their way up. Like there are so many stories of people that started as dishwashers and that are now CEOs of hospitality companies. And so there's a bit of that like baked into the industry we work in. But what that does is it kind of like creates human connection immediately. It creates like an it almost is like empowering them to take action in a way that they already want to do. They just didn't realize they had the opportunity to execute it in their professional job. So we're giving them a way to align their values towards actions by sharing these stories and then giving them the ability to actually change lives through the work that they do. It's been a wonderful, unexpected gift. It's almost like when we share, it cracks open that vulnerability so other people share in an environment that usually you're not bringing your full self into work, and we're making that possible for people in a way that's really unique and special, which I think is why we've kind of created traction quickly. It's because we're connecting to something personal with people. Um,
Yeah.
so we have to protect the stories and the how we tell them. And then when we do share them, it ultimately creates a reciprocal story, which then makes us all realize we can be part of the solution.
Yeah. No, I love it. I think one detail of that is the story of itself of like the C-suite within hospitality because of just the empathy that comes from there. Of just like understanding of, where they were and then being able to like really relate, I think is the relatability. um, I'm sure is such a good entry. And I love that you also share your own story, because it's not just about the stories of the people you're serving and connecting. It's also about your passion of the why behind you, even starting yourself. Like that allows for connection and community. And that's what I'm trying to encourage our community here at Moxie. It's like, well, you want to start something, you got to start with value alignment. You got to start with being true to yourself, because if you build that on something that is not true to who you are, then it's going to be really hard to find that connection just with others if it's not connecting with you yourself, and to wake up every morning and drive it forward, because entrepreneurship is its own
Yeah.
beast. To be able to, yeah, to get up and go. um what would you say, speaking of that, what would you say is your biggest motivation, or even the why? I mean, you've shared your story, but your biggest motivation on the hard days, because even though there's lots of traction and as you guys continue to grow, and it's been really awesome just to even know you the short while in the last couple of years and see what's happened, what kind of, keeps you up, getting up in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is the people that we serve and our partners. I mean, our job is to be an accelerant to their growth and ultimately enable them to create more impact. And so, the more sales we get, the more jobs they can create, the more people get off wait lists. Like we were just told, for Cameron's Chocolates, they're a group that hires individuals with disabilities. It was started by a mother named Ellen, for her daughter Cameron. Cameron came out of school, had all of this potential, was bagging groceries at a Giant, and her mother was like, "She can do so much more. I see all of this passion." And her mother was in like a corporate job, and her daughter loved to bake. And she created a bakery because Cameron needed an outlet and she couldn't get access to those kind of job opportunities. Fast forward, they have 30 individuals with disabilities that work at Cameron's across a wide spectrum of disability, from autism to Down syndrome to blindness. And they create job opportunities where people can build their skills over time. So they're not doing the same task, they're actually growing in their skills. They hired 3 people this summer to keep up with demand from our marketplace,
Wow.
and there's 50 people on a wait list hoping to get the next job. So for us, it's like super personal. Like I know Cameron. Every time I go in, I get a hug from Cameron, and the team, and we know what's possible if we can give people more opportunities. And so that's why we run through the wall. It's like we want to create more jobs, more opportunities, so people can get off wait lists. I think too, uh, corporate America as a whole has a lot of intention and has difficulty taking action because they're doing their core business and they don't know how to do
Mhm.
supplier diversity well. They don't know how to find the amazing vendors that we found. And so, to help direct that energy towards things I know are going to create significant impact is hugely motivating. Everybody on our team comes to the work because of their why. I mean, at least half of our staff are veterans of war, are neurodiverse, are in recovery. So they all have a story and a why. If anything, we have to like make sure they don't burn out because of the passion they have for the work. And we have to make sure that there's like harmony and like rest in the hustle, because we know the stakes are high in the sense that there's so much opportunity out there and so much good we can do. We have to pace ourselves, for the marathon, not
Mhm.
the sprint as a startup. So that's what I have to balance, is like our passion and what's, sustainable in terms of our team.
Yeah. When did you guys get established again?
2.5 years ago. So it's been a wild, wild
Yeah.
ride. So we went from an idea on a piece of paper to piloting with our first hospitality partner that had 12 hotels to now 1,700 hotels, 20 management companies that we work with. It's been a wild ride, but I think we just sort of hit an industry that was looking to redefine itself. Like hotels were all about like standardization, and you walk into one hotel room here,
Mhm.
it's the same. And now they're realizing like people want authentic, grounded, purpose-driven experiences. That's why they're going to Airbnb and other things, right? So I think the
Mhm.
industry is trying to redefine itself. They have huge purchasing power. Small shifts make huge impact. And we had inventory of opportunity for them to take action. So I think we just sort of hit it timing wise. But, when you see like mini bar snacks, you're not like, oh, wow, that's going to be a huge moneymaker. But when you realize that's 300 rooms, or in Vegas, 4,000 rooms
Yeah,
with lots of SKUs in them. Um, Getting those repeat purchase orders for the suppliers we work with create a tremendous amount of jobs for people
for
who
sure.
otherwise wouldn't have access.
Yeah, man, that's so awesome. What would you say are your next steps for I mean, you guys are still sometimes I'm like, "Oh yeah, you guys have been, I don't know, 2.5 years, you're baby, but also have done so much." Like, I think that's why I've just been in awe, like, watching you guys grow and seeing our networks and kind of connections and just being a cheerleader from afar and trying to connect, as many people y'all's way. And yeah, I've been really impressed with what you guys have done. So yeah, in the next couple years or even in the next
Yeah,
6 months, Lauren, what
I
are
know.
some things going
I'm
on?
like day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a pretty focused effort on hospitality, but really anyone can purchase from us that has four walls and that is looking for ways to reimagine their purchasing power and aligning it towards impact. So we see so many adjacent industries that we would love to go after that have the same product needs. Cruise lines, restaurants, gift shops
Mm,
at museums, tourism bureaus, concessions, stadiums, airports. So for us, it's just like new market opportunities that are adjacent to the core business that we've already built. Um, like I said, like small things make a big difference. You switch out a mini bar SKU, that's thousands of dollars every 4 to 6 weeks that are going towards uh, an organization or social enterprise that's creating job opportunities for people with barriers to work. So we're just getting people to realize like it doesn't need to be systematic change overnight, but start small and then grow over time when you start to see the amazing quality of the products and the amazing differentiation it provides for corporate
mhm,
buyers. In terms of storytelling, we just started sharing case studies that help bring to life the people behind the products. And so we did this beautiful case study actually on Cameron's, who I mentioned before, in Hotel Washington, which is this like bougie hotel next to the White House, right? So you imagine like
mm,
really beautiful VIP suites, like rooftop bar, but all these awards. So when you think about the fact that there's 8 different lines of products from our marketplace in that kind of luxury experience, you start to see what's possible across the board. And so we had a film crew kind of follow us along at Cameron's, and you see the people making the products and the precision it takes and the gorgeous end result of these like beautiful caramels, sea salt caramels, and truffles. And at no point during that entire video do we use the word disability. It's just never mentioned. You just see who makes the products and how beautiful they are and how quality they are, and then you see them in the Hotel Washington at the end. And that kind of storytelling is like what we want to do to help galvanize this movement, to help people realize intentional, responsible sourcing is possible, and also the magic that happens when you start to build that kind of supply chain within your business. And so we anticipate we'll spend more resources helping tell those stories in that very authentic behind the scenes way that gently nudges at like bias and misconception and shifts mindset.
mhm. That's so good. Is that video like available for anybody to see?
Yes. Yeah. I'll
Okay.
put a link. I'll send you a link. Yeah.
Please send me a link. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. I love that you mentioned that not one like disability is not mentioned once. It shows like, and I love Cameron's mom, like that she was like, oh, she can do so much more. Like the empowerment aspect of that, providing dignified work, and then showing that no matter where and what and how you come into this world and what's going on, like you have a purpose and a plan. And man, as long as you have the people around you too, that and the support systems, I think like anything is possible. So I love everything you guys are doing. Procure Impact. You guys need to, we'll make sure all of that's in the show notes. You guys check out what's happening. Connect to Lauren, whether on LinkedIn or reach out if you're interested. If you are in hospitality, have like, again, like she's saying, in an adjacent field, especially whether that's again different stores. I know some of you listening have multiple stores or connected museums. Like check out Procure Impact and just be involved in a part of their story. And as we end today, we always love to end with just one last thing to live by to encourage and motivate our community as they're moving forward. So, what is one last thing to live by?
Well, given the topic of the conversation on storytelling, I would just encourage people to show up as authentically as themselves as possible, because then you attract the right partners, the right investors, the right staff. And that has unleashed like a whole level of alignment towards my sort of soul's purpose, and done more than I ever thought it ever could. And I'll give you a small example. I shared recently on LinkedIn about the fact that I'm over 6 years sober. I'm like 6.5 years sober at this point. And how
That's
sobriety
awesome.
has unleashed like total focus for me as an entrepreneur, as a mother. And that's not something you typically start with, like professionally in those networks. Hey, I'm sober. I made that decision after my son was born, realized patterns of behavior. I was always a work hard, play hard person. Now I have full clarity and full alignment towards like my skills and my creativity, and it's unleashed more than I ever thought I'd imagine. But as a consequence of that, over the weekend, I got an email from an investor. So I'm on LinkedIn. 10,000 people looked at this post. It was like it got a lot of comments and engagement. And an investor who doesn't know me very well, who ran a very, very well known company, just wrote me this encouraging, heartfelt note about how proud he is of me, how he's so
Hmm.
excited he invested in Procure Impact in me, and how he appreciates how I'm sharing myself and my story and our story on LinkedIn. And I literally was on my way to a soccer game with my kids and was like tearing up, crying. They're like, "Mommy, are you okay?" And I just thought, like, the amount of beautiful humans that have surrounded me in this moment because I'm showing up unmasked has been profound. Like, I can't, I always say it's like God's will, right? And these are like God
Hmm.
nudges and winks, and all the people who've kind of covered me in this moment and supported me. Like that's someone who barely knew me when he invested in the company and didn't know that about me until he read it, on LinkedIn. And that could cause people to worry, like professionally, if that's going to create damage or, potential shame. And instead, the opposite has happened. It's like people are lifting me up, supporting me, and encouraging me in ways that, every entrepreneur dreams of, right? So I guess I would just say the more unmasked you are, the more vulnerable you are, the right partners and the right people surround you, because you're showing up as your authentic self, and that's what they're buying into, that's what they're seeing. And it's an effort to do that. It takes courage, but man, I can't tell you how many, like, we get Bible verses sent from other investors, and just words of encouragement through this journey that are very atypical for a startup
Hmm.
founder to feel about their investors, right? So I just wanted to share that quickly.
I'm so grateful you did share that because I think that's the scary part of like, okay, yes, especially in a social entrepreneurship enterprise type of setting, which most of our listeners are. It's like, yeah, I'm always going to share about the beneficiaries and who I'm helping and that type of organizational story. But man, I had an investor one year really tell me too when we started pitching for investment, like we want to know you. Like they're investing not yes in the organization, but it's in you. And I think we've had this conversation too off mic a little bit too, of just like they want to encourage and they want to up. And again, depending on what investment crew you have around you, but I think we're really blessed with some people that just they just want to see the best. And so you're not going to be able to see that or even experience that if you don't have the courage to share and put yourself out there. And again, to that, there's there's boundaries in the sense of be ready or share what you are ready to share. Someone once told me, like, sometimes we're not in a place of healing yet to even potentially share that. So wait until you're there. And I think, yeah, sharing that journey is so amazing. I have a lot of really close people in my life who have been sober. One of them now just for 14 months. And it's like such a game changer in their life. And so I'm just so grateful for you being, yeah, vulnerable with us on Moxie and being transparent and sharing. Um, and thank you for joining us today and sharing a little bit about Procure Impact and you, Lauren.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you for what you do. Is what people don't see is like there's a lot of founder to founder calls of encouragement and support, and how can we connect? And you're one of those people that's been very proactive at like making those connections and being a sounding board. So I appreciate you and what you do, and deeply respect what you've built.
Oh, thanks. I try my best to seek out all of the US made. I'm on like the international scope. I'm like, no, Lauren's US. We need to
Yeah.
find the US people. But we're but I try my best. But I'm again so glad that you were able to join us today. And for our Moxie community, check out the show notes, get all information. Go check out, we'll get the video link. That sounds like an amazing case study video. So we'll make sure you guys can see that about Cameron's. And as always, we'll see you guys next week and Moxie on.